Welcome back. All right, let's go through another one of these videos where I talk about all 32 teams and the internet tells me why I'm wrong, even though this is all just opinion, just conjecture, and just trying to figure out. So there's different expectation levels, right? So where would a team be happy? Winning the Stanley Cup, making it to the conference finals, making it to the second round, making it into the playoffs at all, or you know what? This year, we wouldn't mind having the number one draft pick. So looking at it that way, and this kind of comes back to the pressure video that I did the other day, a little bit different though. So we'll start off, and I've got these all in just a randomized order. We'll start off with the Flames. I honestly think that if the Flames make the playoffs this year, fans are happy, but a second round showing would be optimal. Well, the Cup would be optimal, but I think Flames fans, if they make the playoffs and lose in the first round, are not going to be happy with that core. I think for the sake of that core, at least a second round showing has to be in the offing for Calgary. So, yeah, I'll put them underneath the round two heading right there as being where I think that's anything round two and beyond is where fans will be happy. Let me put it that way, okay? At least round two beyond. It's not like fans are going to be like, great, now we're in the conference finals. Now what's going to happen? This is dumb. I liked it better in round two. Nobody's going to say that. Pittsburgh. For Pittsburgh, I would think a minimum of conference finals. This is Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin we're talking about, and it could be Malkin's last go-around with the Pens. He'll probably sign an extension, but his contract comes to an end this year. So I would think at least conference finals for the Penguins to be happy. The demands are high. The expectation levels are pretty high because this is a team that has won 5 Stanley Cups dating back to 91 and, of course, dating back to 67 as well. But the less you talk about 67 through 91, probably the better. But yeah, I think the expectation would be at least conference finals before fans would be happy. Florida, round two. Have to make round two. The idea that making the playoffs and losing in the first round, well, at least you got there. I don't think that's going to do it. I really don't. I think that for Florida, a second round matchup is necessary. Otherwise, fans won't be very happy with the team and with the direction and all of that, right? Edmonton. I would think Edmonton, conference finals. A first-round victory would be nice, but I think with McDavid, Draisaitl, with the team they've put together, the amount of money they're spending on some of these players, the expectation would be at least conference finals for Edmonton in order for fans to be happy with the way things are proceeding. You want to see your team in the Final Four, right? So, and I know every fan base does, but for Edmonton, there feels like there's more urgency to at least get to that level. After kind of spinning their wheels when it comes to the postseason since the drafting of Connor McDavid. Carolina's a tough call. They're still a young team. I think for Carolina fans to be happy this year, I know they made the second round this year and fell out. I'm going to say conference finals would be the minimum for Carolina. If they fall out in the first or second round again, you're going to get a lot of questions about the direction of the team, whether or not they're ever going to get over the top. Even though a lot of the players on this team, a lot of the core is young, you're still going to get those questions. So I would think conference finals. We will see more teams under conference finals than can be in the conference finals. New York Islanders, I would say that Stanley Cup or a Stanley Cup final for the Islanders would be what fans want. They don't want to see things go backwards. You just don't. And I think that with the drought that extends back to 1983, they've got the brand new building. Well, a better way to open a new building than win a Stanley Cup, right? So I think that's the expectation. And I think it's great that the Islanders, I can throw them underneath that heading, and it wouldn't be construed as a joke, as it might have back when Lou took over. It would have been under just playoffs. Just making the playoffs would be considered a victory. Now that they've been a Final Four team twice, you want to see them take that next step and go to the Cup or the finals. This counts being in the final as well. Detroit, this is a tough one. And I thought about having another column here where it was just competitive. But for Detroit, I don't think the number one draft pick is as necessary for them now as it was. I don't know that playoffs are in the offing for them. I'm going to put them under playoffs knowing that people will skip to the end of this video and completely skip my explanation and tear it to pieces How dare I have Detroit under playoffs? Nobody expects them to be there. I don't think the number 1 draft pick is necessary for Detroit. That is a compliment to the job Steve Yzerman's already done, the prospects he's got put together there. And while, yes, if they get the number 1 draft pick, that'd be great. I honestly think with the moves they made in the offseason, adding Nedeljkovic being a big one, that honestly the expectation is getting better. This is where Detroit wants to see their team get better, and I think that's the expectation from Yzerman. Tampa Bay, is that where we're at? I would say so. I would say that with the Tampa Bay Lightning, it will be seen as a disappointment if they don't at least get back to the final and get a chance to win that 3rd straight Stanley Cup. It is a lot to ask. They've played a lot of hockey in a short period of time. Can they win 3 in a row? I honestly don't have any idea, but it's possible. Absolutely possible. Winnipeg. For Winnipeg, I don't think a 1st or 2nd round will necessarily work. I honestly think at this point, with the team they've got put together, and again, you've got a good core in their prime and a great goaltender in Hellebuck, I would think that conference finals would be the aspiration of the team and likely its management as well. So, yeah, for me, Winnipeg, I think conference finals is at least the aim. Anything conference finals and beyond. If they're out in the 1st or 2nd round again, that will be considered a disappointment. St. Louis, it's interesting with St. Louis, isn't it? Where they win the Stanley Cup in 2019 and they're out in the 1st round twice. I don't think a 1st round knockout is going to make Blues fans happy. So is it 2nd round or conference finals? I'm going to go with 2nd round. I'm going to say that as long as they show progress this year and they get out of the 1st round and there's still something there, I think fans will be happy. I don't think the expectation is going back to the Stanley Cup and potentially winning it again. So I'll go with round 2, and again, if/when you disagree with my picks, you guys can let me know, because again, this is just one of those off-the-cuff videos where I'm saying, yeah, no, I think this is what I think, this is who I think belongs where, and you guys can let me know if you agree or disagree. Fun videos. Buffalo, they want the number 1 pick. I mean, there really isn't any way around this. They want Shane Wright. They won't say they want Shane Wright, but I mean, if you're going to be trading Eichel, which I don't think they want to do, I think they would love to keep Jack Eichel, and I think it's like pulling teeth to get them to, make this move. But I think getting that next guy in Shane Wright would be a huge boost for Buffalo. So while there are a lot of reasons to look at Buffalo and think, well, maybe things get a little bit better if, I don't think management's planning it that way. And I think fans realize, this is probably not going to work. Ottawa, after the second half Ottawa had, I'm going to say playoffs. Ottawa could use that number 1 draft pick as well. Most teams could use a Shane Wright. Just going to throw that out there. Or Connor Bedard down the road too, right? So most teams could use that kind of fantastic skill player. But for Ottawa, they did show some upward momentum last year in the second half of the season. I kind of expect them to be able to do that again this year. And if their goaltending holds, they could be a dark horse for a wild card spot. Absolutely. At the very least, staying in the hunt until late. Dallas, for Dallas making the playoffs, I'll say round 2. I'll say round 2 is where it would be considered a successful season for Dallas. And again, people can argue why they think more or less, but for Dallas, for me, it's a round 2 appearance. I know personally I'd be happy with that. I don't envision them as being a Stanley Cup champion. I do think that there's a lot of really good young players there. I don't think they're going to need to go through a rebuild, but it just feels like this team probably not good enough to win a Stanley Cup, probably should be in the playoffs. If they make it to the 2nd round, I'd be happy. Minnesota, I don't think playoffs or a 2nd round are going to work. I think Minnesota fans are getting kind of antsy for their first long run in a long time, so I'll put them as conference finals. And again, this depends on the whole Kaprizov thing working out and Guerin figuring out how to fix the team down the middle, right? So the Minnesota Wild have been also Rans who either missed the playoffs or in the 1st round or the 2nd round every single year since 2003. I think to generate real excitement, I think a minimum of conference finals for this team. They need to go on a run. Just making the playoffs, being a tough out in the 1st round is not going to get it done. So, yeah, for Minnesota, I'll say conference finals. Seattle, I'm gonna buck the trend a little bit. Playoffs would be great for Seattle, but just think about if they get that number 1 draft pick and they draft Shane Wright. So they have a respectable season, miss the playoffs, and win the draft lottery. So respectable season, no playoffs, win draft lottery, and profit, right? So for Seattle, I will say the number 1 draft pick. You need that star player. There will be star players available in the next 2 drafts, and I would think the number 1 draft pick, really, really entertaining. Now, if they make the playoffs, I think Seattle will be quite happy to make the playoffs, but secretly, I think they know that if they get the number 1 draft pick next year, they're kind of pretty far ahead. And it's one thing Vegas didn't do, right? Vegas was great right out of the gate. Didn't get that generational talent down the middle. They didn't get, what some of the number 1 draft picks have been since they came into the league. So I get the feeling Seattle might be more willing to go through a little bit more pain before things turn around. Toronto. For Toronto, I know they haven't made it out of the first round since 2004. I think the conference finals, though, are the minimum. I think if Toronto goes in, let's say they go into the first round of the playoffs this year and they knock out Florida, right? And then in the second round, they get taken out by Tampa and 5. We are not going to be talking about the very successful season of the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll be saying, hey, they got out of the first round, but they still weren't able to overcome the defending Stanley Cup champions, and therefore, and then you get into all the discussions, right? Toronto, I think, needs a run to the conference finals. They need to come out of their division and show that, yep, these guys who are getting paid the big money, it's worth it in the playoffs. You can talk about regular season stats all you want, and that's valid, but there are a lot of players who never win one in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They never actually win a championship, and it is one of those things that gets talked about whenever you talk about that star player. So I've done videos on players who've gone through that. So yeah, Toronto, I think it's a minimum of conference final. But again, you guys can let me know. Philadelphia, I honestly think at this point playoffs would make Flyers fans happy. And again, they want sustained success. Now, I know there's Flyers fans who want more, but I don't know that this team gets that done. I had faith in them a year ago. They kind of burned me for it. So, yeah, for me, I'll say playoffs would be a successful season for Philadelphia. And just showing that improvement. Carter Hart getting back to the kind of stats he had before this past season, and just a better overall game from Philadelphia. Washington, I don't think first round will make Washington happy. I don't think second round. I honestly think a conference finals appearance would be enough for Caps fans, for the Caps team. I don't know if it would be enough for Ovechkin. I think Ovechkin wants another Stanley Cup. And I think it's easy to underrate just how much Ovechkin would like to prove he's not a one-hit wonder when it comes to Stanley Cups. So I think Ovechkin would be over here with Cup or Finals. I think the fan base, just the organization, I think a conference finals appearance would be considered a very successful season. Chicago. Chicago's building their team with playoffs in mind. And if they make it to the playoffs and lose in the first round, I think it'll be considered a success. This was a team that, said, all right, so we're going to go through kind of a retool here. And I don't know if it's taken longer than they expected. The moves they've made in the offseason would tell you by adding Seth Jones, Marc-Andre Fleury, that they believe they should be in the hunt. So I get the feeling that playoffs will be considered a success for Chicago. Columbus, I think the number 1 draft pick would make Columbus very happy. Columbus has spent years as a team that doesn't really have that bona fide star. I mean, Nash is probably the closest you've had to a bona fide superstar forward for Columbus. They've had some very good players, but that player you build around is in this year's draft. And I think Columbus, while I don't think that they're completely selling with the moves that they've made in the offseason, I do think they're looking to the future and they're saying, okay, we need to have a long-term plan, and I think the number 1 draft pick would be huge for them. Vegas has only one thing left to do, and that's win a Stanley Cup. And now they're going into year 5, so we're getting into more of the area where fans won't complain as much about Vegas not going through pain to get there. So once you get up to about 10 years, you won't hear as much about it. You may hear complaints that they didn't actually have to do a lot of building to become a contender, but If it takes them 10 years to finally win a Stanley Cup, there won't be nearly as much complaining. But for Vegas, it is cup or bust. And I think it's going to be that way as long as Bill Foley is bound and determined to make it happen, and as long as the team is going out and pursuing veterans and star players when they're available. There's a reason that everybody goes, oh, Jack Eichel's available. Well, why not Vegas? Because they're always in on the big names. Vancouver, playoffs. Now, I did sigh only because I still think that if Vancouver this year had just bit the bullet and waited until those contracts for Eriksson, Roussel, and Beagle and everybody else, if they had just waited until those contracts expired, then they'd have tons of money next summer. We'd have one more year of probably a pretty mediocre team. But next summer, they'd be able to go out on the free agent market and spend. They might have had the number 1 draft pick this year. I know, people are going to laugh because that would involve winning a draft lottery. Canucks don't do that. But all right, let's just say a top 5 pick this year coming up. They may still get there anyways, but with the moves they're making, again, much like Chicago, they are aiming for playoffs. Anything less than playoffs, Vancouver Canucks organization would see that as a failure. Colorado, it's Cup. It's Cup. I don't think a Stanley Cup final would make Colorado fans overly happy either. I mean, it'd be nice to go that far, but I think this team right now, with how they're built and with contracts having, the endpoints that they have, and eventually you're going to have trouble staying under the cap. Colorado, I think it's Stanley Cup. And I think that's where we're at. I think anything less than that will be seen as a disappointment. Montreal, it's an interesting thing about Montreal. They're a team that would have missed the playoffs in 2020, but because of the expanded playoffs and the play-in round, they made it. They got past Pittsburgh. This year, they only had 24 wins in 56 games, but they got hot at the right time. They knocked out Toronto. They knocked out Winnipeg. They knocked out Vegas. They go to the Stanley Cup final. It has raised that bar to the point where I think anything less for Montreal than a playoff appearance will be seen as a disappointment. I don't think there's pressure on them to do a lot in said playoffs. Let's just say in round 1 that they make it as a 4th place team and they play Tampa Bay in the first round and lose. I don't think that'll be seen as a huge issue for them. But if they can make the playoffs with all the losses and just some of the just day-to-day stuff they're going to go through, combined with the bruising punishment of those runs to the Stanley Cup final. If they make the playoffs, that will be seen as a success. For the Kings, I'll say playoffs for the Kings, because I think we're at that point where LA trying to get better. They've got a lot of the young prospects. At some point, you have to be done collecting prospects, and you just have to try to get into the playoffs. With the moves the Kings have made this offseason, I think it's made it clear that Rob Blake sees them as a playoff team. So we'll see how it goes. San Jose, I think of teams right now that need that number 1 draft pick. I think San Jose is there. I think San Jose could really use that top-notch young forward that can be the superstar they can build around for that next generation of San Jose Sharks. The Sharks have always been very good in developing guys from within and getting production from players you don't necessarily expect. But at this stage, I think they need that number 1 draft pick. And I know Doug Wilson's talked about making the playoffs. New Jersey, the Devils have made it clear they foresee themselves as a playoff team. Absolutely. New Jersey, the moves they've made in the offseason are not being done because they envision themselves as being in on the number 1 draft pick. They've kind of, it feels like they've gotten tired of being outside a playoff position, and it's time to go for it. So I would think that's the expectation. Arizona, move them right there. Arizona, number 1 draft pick. I can't see Arizona not ending up outside the playoffs. Put it that way. And I think it could be a rough year. I'm trying to think of how many, like maybe 20, 25 wins is possible with Arizona. And yeah, I think with all the draft picks they've stockpiled, they would really covet that number 1 draft pick. And I think they would do whatever they needed to try to secure that if they can. So yeah, number 1 draft pick. Rangers, playoffs. Rangers, I think the playoffs would make their fans happy, would make the team happy. And so I'll say just a playoff appearance. Just to show there's been some kind of advancement. And in the Metro, to be one of the top 4 teams, or top 5 if the 5th place Metro blocks out the 4th place team in the Atlantic and you get the crossover, I honestly think that the Rangers and their fans would be happy with that. Anaheim is not in a position for playoffs. And yeah, I think the number 1 draft pick, if they can get it, I think they'd be happy there too. And Anaheim also, much like a few of the others on the board, stockpiling a lot of great prospects. But the roster they have right now, to me, doesn't scream playoffs on any level. So, yeah, I would say we're looking at least one more year of the Ducks going through what the Ducks have been going through. They may get a little bit better, but in the end, they'll probably still be in the running for that number 1 draft pick. Nashville. I'll say round 2 for Nashville. I think making the playoffs would be fine, but they've been out in the first round, and in 2021 and in 2020, of course, they lost in the play-in round. I think an appearance in the second round, being one of the final 8, would be enough to make fans happy. This is a very high-energy organization in terms of its fans and in terms of its marketing and everything. I think a top 8 appearance would make them happy. And Boston. Boston's a tough call. I'm not sure what to expect from Boston. I honestly think that their best opportunity was probably in 2019, but I think the expectation, I think it's really high. I think it takes a conference finals for Boston. I don't know if they get there. I really don't. I'm being honest as a Boston fan. I don't know that they get there, but I would think it would at least take a conference finals to make the Bruins happy. So there's the question I have now for everybody out there watching this. What level do you see that your team you cheer for, you'd be happy if they got there? So you can say, as a Hawks fan, yeah, if they make the playoffs and lose in the first round, I'd be happy. Panthers fan, yeah, as long as they get out of the first round, I'm happy. Where is that level for you? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.